Good afternoon. Thank you for being here today. My name is Jonathan Sines. I'm the president of Texas Values. I'm also a licensed attorney, and our organization stands for Faith, Family, and Freedom in the state of Texas. After months of delay and months of discussion, we now have the City Council ready to actually have a discussion and a debate in front of the people about a controversial non-discrimination policy, as it's being called, for lesbian, gays, bisexual, and transgender, but not just about discrimination and addressing that issue, but in a way that tramples on religious freedom and stifles free speech. Because this issue has been so hard and controversial and divisive, the council has now gone through numerous drafts. And after every draft, all it's done is created more confusion and more concern for people. It's drawn local attention, national attention, and state attention from elected officials and from press expressing outrage and concern about these issues. It's also been something that the City Council's been addressed, and as people have been spoken to them, to the tune of over 25,000 messages have been sent to the City Council on this issue electronically. This issue has been dogged by controversy, by division, by concern, and confusion. And today, the day has come for the City Council to make the right decision and set this measure aside. But I thought what was important today is for you to hear from people that are in leadership positions from the San Antonio. You've heard from people at the state level, you've heard from people at the national level, but today you get to hear from key leaders of the faith, legal, and business communities whose concerns have reached a very high point, and that's why they're here today. The extreme power grab by the City Council government on this issue is something that shocks the conscience and has tarnished the rich religious heritage of the city of San Antonio. And if Mayor Castro and Councilman Diego Bernal were looking for a way to divide the people of the city in San Antonio, they found it with this ordinance. So now let me introduce you to some key leaders of the city of San Antonio. First, I want to welcome up Robert Wilson, who's a local San Antonio attorney that's been practicing in the area for decades. So Robert, if you come forward.
The U.S. Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black stated that our Constitution was not written in the sands to be blown away by each successive political wind. Today, our City Council considers an ordinance that is being championed on the unfounded notion that there is discrimination in this city against a select group of people. That discrimination has not been shown, and the need for this ordinance has not been proven. But what has been proven in other cities where these ordinances are passed is that the constitutionality, protected religious liberties of people of faith are trampled upon, and they are told to be silent. Our right to speak our faith, to live our faith, to run our businesses according to our faith is firmly established in the Constitution and cannot be criminalized because of the current trend in our culture to give special protection to a certain class of people. When that happens, liberty is lost. In America, the government is established to protect freedom, not to use its intolerance for certain viewpoints to intimidate citizens into acting contrary to their faith and to being silent. Every council member who votes for this ordinance is telling their constituents that they will no longer have the right to politely say no when they are asked to provide products or services that violate their religious beliefs. That standing up for their convictions in their own businesses will now become a crime. Running their businesses according to their religious convictions will bar them from conducting businesses with the city, and speaking their beliefs regarding sexual behavior will be grounds for them to be removed from participation in city government. San Antonio can and must do better than that.
I want to next welcome up Patrick Von Dolan from the San Antonio Family Association.
Good morning. You have to have harmony in the heart to have harmony in the person. You have to have harmony in the person to have harmony in the family. You have to have harmony in the family to have harmony in society. You have to have harmony in the world, in the society, to have harmony in the world. The proposed revisions of the non-discrimination ordinance attacks harmony in the heart. Therefore, it attacks the family. The division of the family divides society. Society divides the world as a result. We've all heard of Good Samaritans and the Good Samaritan law. Good Samaritans have heart. They have hearts for genuinely helping other people to attain life greater than oneself can obtain. They want every person to obtain true harmony by making choices that lead to real peace, joy, as we pursue happiness. We people of faith are called to share the truth so people can live in peace and joy. There's more to life than eating, drinking, and being merrily with selfish pleasure. We want people to enjoy the joy that satisfies. Selfish, deviant behavior is fleeting and never leads to true joy. The division in the heart disables one human from helping another. We want more joy. We need to grow in virtue. The majority of the people in San Antonio believe we are called to help our neighbor physically, emotionally and spiritually. That requires word and deed. That requires action. In 1836, while the Texans in the Alamo called and sent for help, they didn't receive the reinforcement they needed to meet the odds they would face as they perished. They needed Good Samaritans in a time of peril. If this ordinance is passed, it will divide the hearts of people who live and work in and around San Antonio, in and around the Alamo, and will divide our society, which will inevitably result in many, many more unanswered calls from a Good Samaritan. Our most cherished rights of freedom of speech, religion, and conscience, and to marry and raise a family in our religious beliefs, which includes responding to the call to be a Good Samaritan, to help our fellow humans, needs to be protected. On behalf of the San Antonio Family Association, I implore the members of the City Council to vote no on the proposed revisions to the existing non-discrimination ordinance to fulfill their responsibility as elected officials to protect the family. Protect our form of government that leads people to make good choices, not to moments of fleeting happiness and selfish pleasure. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce my daughter, Blaine Von Dolan, to speak.
Hello, my name is Blaine Von Dolan. I am 12 years old, and I am a resident of San Antonio in District 9. First off, I would like to say that I am all for equality for everyone, but I am for the equality that God gave us. And this equality is for a natural man to be with a natural woman. That being said, I would like to say this quote called God's first command. God created mankind in his image, male and female. He created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fertile and multiply." And I want to know that I can live in the U.S. and still know that we have the equality that God gave us. That is why I am against this ordinance. Thank you, and I will pray for everyone else in this city and country. Thank you.
I want to welcome up from the business community Scott McMurray, who is the president of the San Antonio Christian Business Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm not from San Antonio. I'm from Tyler, Texas, but we are so glad to be a part of this community. We're very proud of San Antonio. San Antonio has a history of being a friendly people, warm and embracing diversity, very pro-business. Yesterday, the Christian Business Chamber of Commerce voted unanimously to oppose the ordinance. We oppose the ordinance because it's inconsistent with the values and the strengths of this beautiful city that we live in. We are a people of tolerance. We are a people of appreciation of the differences. We are not going backward to the age of fear about the people we don't understand. We invite the community of the LGBTs and anybody else not to be afraid of us. Look at our history. We are the most tolerant people God has ever put on the earth. And all we're asking for is that tolerance come back to us and allow us to be those who speak freely without fear. Those of you in business know that if you have an atmosphere of confusion, if you have an atmosphere of fear, it discourages business and it discourages new businesses from coming to San Antonio. Many mayors and many councils before this one have done a fabulous job of bringing business to this city. And I am disappointed that this measure has created a national embarrassment to San Antonio, and it's actually regressive in the things that matter to us most. Thank you for your time.
I want to next welcome Pastor Charles Flower, who is the lead pastor for the Faith Outreach Church in San Antonio.
It would do us well as we stand here today not to forget the significance of the moment.
Right.
50 years ago today, Martin Luther King Jr. gathered on the Mall in Washington, over 250,000 people, because they had come to Washington because they were being oppressed by the law. Jim Crow law in the South had them relegated to very small sections, moving perhaps only from one ghetto to the next ghetto. Here we are 50 years later. The law is still trying to be used to lock up liberty. 50 years ago, Martin Luther King said that they were coming to the mall in Washington to cash a check. It's a promissory note that is embedded within the rights of the Constitution that all people are created equal.
Yeah.
But when you begin to construct laws 50 years later that silence the mouths of people and close their ideas out of the marketplace and out of government, it is still very evident that we have quite a distance to go in this nation. And this is why we must not let this law pass. This ordinance must not pass in the city of San Antonio, because it throws us back 50 years. It puts us back to a time of oppression and a time of isolation and being minimized and marginalized as a people. Those who embrace the principles, the Judeo-Christian principles of faith, their ideas are just as valid in government and just as valid in the marketplace as anyone else's ideas. And we should not have to stop saying that. This is a day that marks a speech where Martin Luther King retorted that he had a dream. And what I want to say to you today, that dream is not dead. That dream is still alive. That dream reaches well beyond the restrictions that a small group of people positioned in places of power wants to place on the masses. That dream reaches way beyond a discussion about lifestyles and whether or not that lifestyle should be sanctioned by a government. No, that dream reaches well beyond into the areas of free speech. I have a right to stand. I have a right to speak. A councilwoman has a right to speak her mind. A council person has a right to put forth their ideas in this marketplace. So I ask you today, on the behalf of freedom, on the behalf of 50 years of a struggle, let's not return backwards. Let's keep moving forward and decide that we're going to embrace and release liberty to the next generation, and that we're not going to gather ourselves around a small group of power mongers that is trying to shape the world that you and I live in. We have a responsibility to pass on liberty to our children and to our children's children. And we're here today not only because we embrace those things and enjoy them, but because we want to secure them for generations to come. God bless you and thank you.
Thank you. I want to next have come up Alice Patterson, the president of Justice at the Gate.
here today in my flag shirt because I love this nation and I love this city. And I love the values that our forefathers fought for. Freedom of speech and freedom of religion and freedom of conscience and freedom of the media, the free press. It's not just churches that have values. People and businesses have values. This ordinance criminalizes certain values. It criminalizes free speech and it criminalizes the free expression of religion if it happens outside the walls of the church. The city needs to get out of the values manipulation business. The council is not only manipulating values, but they are criminalizing values. If you want to satisfy the faith community, there are 4 words you can take out of this ordinance: sexual orientation, gender identity. After church on Sunday, and we had prayer about this issue, a woman came up to me. She's a policeman here in town. Just this last week, a man that she was dealing with was dressed like a woman, and he wanted her to call him ma'am. And she said, "Well, sir, it says here on your driver's license that you're a male." And I told her, if this passes, that will be against the law. And you will be fined and lose your job. That's just wrong, folks. We know it's wrong, and we need to stand up for what's right. As Councilman Chan is experiencing, the real discrimination is coming from the other side. National homosexual groups have threatened to boycott San Antonio, just like they did Chick-fil-A, because the owner said he supported traditional marriage. And what did traditional values folks do? We didn't go argue. We showed up with our pocketbooks. And Chick-fil-A had record sales in every single one of their places. The same thing will happen in San Antonio when the council defeats this measure. People with traditional American values will come to San Antonio and open up their pocketbooks.
Next, I want to welcome up Phil Sevilla, who's the president of the Texas Leadership Coalition.
Good afternoon. It's kind of hot today. Thank you for all being here today. Texas Leadership Coalition is an educational organization led by Catholic men and women who promote the moral and ethical teachings of the Catholic Church. Our mission is to clearly explain the social doctrines of the Church in accord with 2,000 years of biblical teaching and sacred tradition. TLC is strongly opposed to the City of San Antonio's consolidated non-discrimination policy. We do not hold that any member of society should be discriminated upon on the basis of his or her race, sex, other innate and immutable characteristics, and historically verifiable evidence of institutionalized bigotry such as religion. However, we believe that sexual orientation and gender identity do not warrant special protection as a class that should be included, because evidence from the social sciences proves that disordered attraction to the same sex and confusion about one's sexual identity are psychological and emotional conditions that can change, that are not inborn. There is no gay gene. There is no gay gene. Last year, an 18-year-old British youth, Bradley Cooper, who spent his teenage years going through sex change hormone therapy from male to female, decided to reverse course and remain a male. There are other examples of this. We're disturbed to hear about transgender camps in Connecticut and California now that are indoctrinating children as young as 8 to 15 years of age to accept their gender confusion and prepare for a time where they will be old enough to undergo sex change operations. What happens when such a young, immature person goes through a serious procedure to mutilate and destroy his or her sexual organs and decides at a later time that this change was a mistake? This is a mistake. This ordinance is a mistake. I lived through this in San Francisco for 20 years. In the 1990s, I was working in Silicon Valley for 20 years when we saw the Catholic Charities of San Antonio, of San Francisco, and United Airlines pressured to accept domestic partners or stop doing business in San Francisco. I saw that in the 1990s. In Sun Microsystems, I saw a software programmer who was a he then, who changed his sex and wanted to go to the women's bathrooms. We were all told to go through sensitivity training. And that's actually in the ordinance. Everybody that works for the city is going to go through sensitivity training. Will taxpayers and stockholders be forced to pay for such mutilations as what I discussed, expanding their healthcare plans to allow sex change operations to avoid anti-discrimination lawsuits? It's within the realm of possibility. Would you agree? This is the brave new world we are facing. With the aggressive militant agenda, we are confronted by similar anti-discrimination ordinances. The implications of this ordinance is far-reaching and difficult to imagine. Let's slow down. Let's study it. Let's talk about it. Let the citizens be heard. Let the citizens be heard. Let the citizens be heard. We the people, that's right. What we do know is the mounting evidence from all over the country that the civil and religious liberties of ordinary citizens and businesses are being violated by such ordinances. Lastly, the cultural and social upheaval that such ordinances will precipitate in San Antonio is mind-boggling. The ordinance will cause major divisions, as we're seeing here this past few months, and conflict between our faith communities, business establishments, and municipal government will grow. Thank you.
Next, I want to welcome Bishop Conrad Palacios.
Bishop Conrad Palacios, I pastor the south side of the River Worship Center. I also represent the Hispanic Action Network and 400 churches located in 10 countries. Next month I'll be in Europe, where already anti-Semitism is rising. The following month I'll be in California, where already churches are being attacked. In dealing with separation of church and state, it's not to keep the church out of the state, but to keep the state out of the church. We must be very, very clear that not only are we congregants of churches, but we're taxpayers, we're voters, and we have a voice, and our voice counts just like every other voice that's out there. This deceptive anti-discriminatory ordinance is deceptive in its title in and of itself, for it is a reverse discrimination ordinance against people of faith, and even those people of faith who oppose any homosexual lifestyle. And it is true, we will not call it LGBT, we will call it HLGC. It is not freedom to place people from a smaller cage in a bigger cage, and this ordinance is neither of each. This ordinance is determined to muzzle the Christian community. And so I want to be very direct, not as a bishop, not only as a pastor, but as a voting citizen in San Antonio, Texas, living in District 4, doing business in District 5, with all of the pastors and bishops, with members in every single district in San Antonio, that if you vote for this ordinance, we will not vote for you when you run again. And we want to let you know that you are not appointed officials, you are elected officials. And if you got elected in, then the church that was asleep is waking up, and we will elect you right out of office, including the mayor of San Antonio. Thank you.
I want to next welcome Pastor Gerald Ripley of the Responsible Government Coalition.
I'm Pastor Gerald Ripley. I've lived in San Antonio 33 years. I live in District 10. When I speak as Director of Voices for Marriage, I represent 240 pastors and ministry leaders all across the city. As facilitator of the Responsible Government Coalition, I speak for our association of leaders of 11 organizations and other individuals. The score was 43-7. It wasn't an outstanding day for Tony Romo. It wasn't the Spurs' best first quarter ever. It was 43 speakers against domestic partner benefits and 7 speakers for. Despite that lopsided score, the City Council of 2011 voted to add domestic partner benefits to the budget. The City Council of 2013 is poised to vote a week from tomorrow. Once again, a lopsided majority of voters are against the proposed ordinance. One poll had 88% against. we elected city council to represent us. We elected city council to carry out our expressed will. The Responsible Government Coalition is watching to see how each council member votes. We have spoken at Citizens to be Heard. We have visited council members in their offices. We have shared our concerns repeatedly. We have made phone calls. We have prayed. Today we urge City Council to reflect the views of their constituencies and to vote to table the ordinance.
I'm going to next welcome up Alan Parker, President of the Texas Justice Foundation.
Thank you very much. My name is Alan Parker. I'm the president of the Justice Foundation. I'm an attorney at law. And I've lived here for 25 years in my community. I've sort of stayed out of this fight in the past because, like most of the people in the Faith Committee, it's kind of been a live and let live attitude. But now my religious beliefs are being criminalized by the city of San Antonio, and the right of anyone who believes in biblical marriage or traditional sexual values, or just the fact that there are two genders, male and female, is now going to be a criminal under this ordinance. And I've read the ordinance that they're proposing, and the promises of Representative Bernal are not in the ordinance. He told us there'd be a lot of things in it, that it wouldn't require sexual domestic partnership benefits. It is silent on that topic. It does not say what it needs to say to protect you. It would have to say it is not unlawful discrimination to refuse to give partnerships to domestic couples, gay couples, or to limit it to married couples, as most employers do now. Second thing hasn't changed. This applies to every business in the city. It is not just contractors, because they define public accommodation, and that definition has not changed, as every business in the city. That's an exact quote. Whether wholesale or retail, that holds itself open to the public and sells something. That's the definition of business. Come and buy my products. They're all open to the public. And that includes churches. That may be confusing, but they define churches as places of public accommodation. That's why it is difficult. So none of his promises are in the statute. You can say to him, where does it say that? Where does it say that? They have put in a couple of things. The religious exemption is still limited just to hiring. If you preach against homosexuality, you're not protected. That's not hiring. If you have books in your bookstore that say marriage should be between a woman and a woman, and you don't carry gay books, that's discrimination. So it's still just a hiring exemption only. Number two, you don't have to advocate it, but if you speak against homosexuality, you're not protected. So you can be silent and not be a criminal under this ordinance. Number two, they appear to be trying to give a bathroom exception, all right? But it says, nothing herein shall be construed as directing or any policy or practice regarding the use of restrooms, shower rooms, or similar facilities which have been designated for use by persons of opposite sex. Okay, it's misleading and deceptive because we think of sex as male and female, two genders. So there could be a men's bathroom and a women's bathroom. But the city has redefined sex, and they did not change their definition of sex. Sex is not just biological sex, but it is sexual orientation and gender identity. So a man who puts on a woman's dress has now assumed the gender of a woman and could go into the woman's bathroom under this ordinance. It does not change that. And again, those boos are only because of one's sexual activities and bathroom facilities and showering to be limited to those of the same biological gender. And that's what the ordinance should say if they wanted to give an exemption for biological gender.
I'm
But I have copies for the media of the exact language of the ordinance, and we're happy to give that out. And then the last thing, two things. It is a crime. It's still a Class C misdemeanor. People say, where does it say it's a crime? Section 10, Class C misdemeanor. That's $500 a day, and every day is a separate fine. So 1 month is $15,000 fine. 6 months is a $90,000 fine. How does it build up? Somebody files a complaint against you, and that's all it would take. Any member of the aggrieved community who thinks they ought to get domestic partnerships and it's discriminatory not to do it can file a civil or a criminal complaint against you with the city. So it takes 6 months. Then they did put in a new provision that says the city may attempt to eliminate the discriminatory practice by pretrial diversion or conciliation. This is misleading. First of all, they don't say it's an attempt to conciliate among the parties, which is normally a good thing to do. Well, sit down and talk about it. Maybe we can work this out. No, they have presumed guilt by saying it's an attempt to eliminate the discriminatory practice. The city, by its very legal definition, assumes by law if someone files a complaint against you, you're guilty, and then you may have a re-education session with the city where they say, well, we can fine you $90,000, or we'll fine you $10,000 if you put up a public sign saying you approve of this lifestyle and you're never going to discriminate against again. So that's all they've done. So this is, and again, people say, I don't know of any churches in San Antonio that don't want gay and lesbians to come to their churches, but they don't want to do gay and lesbian weddings. Can't we agree and disagree on that? Gay and lesbians can find churches to do their weddings for them. That's perfectly legal now. They don't need protection of the law to have gay weddings. But they're trying to force churches that believe in the core of their soul that marriage is between a man and a woman before Lord God Almighty. They're attempting not to live and let live, but to force by the pressure of law and criminal prosecution for us to violate our deeply held religious beliefs about marriage. That's what this law does. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here today. I think it's become very clear. You've heard today from representatives of people that speak for thousands of people throughout the San Antonio community that have an investment in this community, that have spent time in this community, that have families in this community. They care about San Antonio. This is San Antonio, the city of San Antonio speaking today. And what this ordinance has been about is 3 C's: confusion, concern, and controversy. And if the city council passes this ordinance, you can add another C to that, and that's the courts. Because you can feel very certain that people will challenge this in court, that people will be prosecuted on this in court. And if you think there won't be prosecution that trumps religious liberty, look no further than a court decision from the Supreme Court of New Mexico last week, where a discrimination policy similar to this was used to stifle and trample and trump the religious liberty of a private business owner who was punished. Their religious rights were violated in that Supreme Court case. Make no mistake about it. And that's what will happen with this ordinance. It will be used as a weapon to intimidate and to punish people of faith and people who have an interest in business in the San Antonio community who care about traditional values in Texas and in this city. So thank you for being here today.